Indonesia. Please, Ibu. I'd like to call Mrs. Julie Mulonga, Regional Director, Wetlands International, East Africa. I'd like to call Mrs. Joyce Klug, Circular Economy and Waste Sector Expert of the European Investment Bank. And I'd like to call Shamim Wazi Nyamba, Community Manager of Africa Hatch Blue. Thank you so much for being here. And please, yes, take your pictures. It is not that often that you will see only powerful women's voices on a panel. So it's worth noting. Well, thank you very much again for being here. I'll give a little bit of an introduction and then I'll move to some of our panelists for a statement that they have prepared to ground us into the issue before we move to the panel discussion. As you all know, plastic pollution represents over 80% of the total marine pollution. But when plastic reaches the ocean, it is already too late. The remediation becomes the only band-aid we have. The Global Plastic Action Partnership I'm leading is the world's largest initiative tackling plastic pollution. We're working with 25 countries across the Global South, supporting local stakeholders from government, private sector, academia, civil society, and also the informal sector to translate commitment into action toward a circular plastic economy. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the government of Kenya for their leadership, first in organizing this very first ocean conference on the African soil, but also for their leadership yesterday as we announced the launch of the Kenya NPAP, the National Plastic Action Partnership, the local chapter here in Kenya that is now starting the work at the national level. I commend Kenya's vision to address plastic pollution, not only as an environmental challenge, but as an economic opportunity to drive green industrialization and a more resilient economy. I would like please to ask you to give a round of applause for the launch of the National Plastic Action Partnership for Kenya. I started with the fact that plastic pollution represents the major source of pollution of the ocean. Proof, science is all here. But what is also strong is the economic impact that is already here today and which will only increase in the future. For example, plastic marine debris, when they entangle into coral reef, make it 20 times more likely to developing disease. At the same time, coral reef generates about 70 million tourist visits and a revenue of 36 billion over 100 countries. Pollution is a real economic threat. In Asia Pacific, for example, marine debris cost 10.8 billion since 2015. This is 6.4 billion in tourism activity, 2.9 billion in shipping and transport, and 1.5 billion in fishery and agriculture. And this is not including the cleanup cost. Finally, this is not just an environmental and economic crisis, this is also a health crisis, with microplastic affecting not only our environment, but also our own bodies. Each of us ingest or breathe the value of a credit card of microplastic a week. But to end on a positive note, the question is no longer whether solutions exist. The question is how we create the policy condition and the right environment to allow those solutions to scale. For this, we brought together this distinguished panel, which will be able to share their perspective. So let me first welcome here to the stage to deliver her statement, Ibu Kartika Listriana, the Director General of the Marine Spatial Planning from the Government of Indonesia.
Thank you, Moderator. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Indonesia views marine debris not simply as an ocean issue, but as a source to see challenge that requires integrated solution. As the world's largest archipelagic nation, we recognize that what enters our ocean often originates far upstream in watershed, rivers, urban areas, and coastal communities. Therefore, addressing marine debris requires more than cleaning the ocean. It requires integrated management from the source to the sea. For this reason, Indonesia is strengthening the integration of terrestrial and marine spatial planning to ensure that watershed management, waste management, coastal protection, and marine conservation are addressed as one interconnected system. We believe that healthy rivers, healthy coasts, and healthy oceans cannot be managed separately. Looking ahead, Indonesia is advancing a community-based net zero waste approach, particularly in coastal and watershed areas. Our goal is not only to reduce marine debris, but also to create economic opportunities for local communities. By promoting circular economic practices and community empowerment, we seek to transform waste from an environmental burden into a valuable resource that supports livelihoods and inclusive growth. At the same time, we continue to strengthen collaborative efforts involving government, communities, academia, the private sector, and development partners. Through various initiatives, we are promoting behavioral change, improving waste management system, protecting critical coastal ecosystem, and reducing waste leakage into the marine environment. In this regard, Indonesia would like to acknowledge the valuable role of the multi-stakeholder partnership like Global Plastic Action Partnership and its partners. Indonesia was the first country to join the Global Plastic Action Partnership in 2019. And since then, the National Plastic Action Partnership, Indonesia has supported the government in identifying and coordinating solutions, convening key stakeholders and accelerating the transition toward a more circular plastic economy. So this collaborative platform has helped strengthen coordination across government, business, civil society, academia, and development partner in addressing plastic pollution through a system approach. We are encouraged to see this modeling gaining momentum globally. This reflects our broader vision of the blue economy, where environmental sustainability and community welfare go hand in hand. Indonesia remains committed to strengthening partnership, sharing experiences, and working with the international community to achieve a cleaner, healthier, and more resilient ocean for the future generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me now call our second speaker, Mrs. Shamin Wazinyanda, to come to the podium for a statement.
Good afternoon. You guys are so gloomy. Anyway, yeah, my name is Shamim, and I couldn't be more excited than any other African woman out there, given the fact that our ocean conference, as you know, is happening for the first time on the African soil, and that makes me excited. But then we know the problem. We know what is the problem, plastic pollution, but then what is the solution? And as we continue discussing today about marine pollution and plastic pollution, I would like to bring in a slightly different perspective to the conversation. Because too often we focus on the problem, but across Africa, women are already building solutions and tackling plastic pollution that we have been part of the problem in this room. Through the program that I work on called the Women in Ocean Food Africa, We support over 11 women-led businesses across sub-Saharan Africa, 7 countries, working in seafood, aquaculture, seaweed, fish processing, nutrition, and circular economy solutions. These entrepreneurs are reducing waste, creating jobs, strengthening food security because that is we need. And as we all know, blue food systems feed over 3 billion people globally. And we really need to step up the game to make sure that we have healthier oceans. And demonstrating that healthy oceans and economic growth can go hand in hand. If we want to tackle marine pollution from micro to macro, we must invest in people that are already implementing solutions on the ground. And on the ground, I mean, we must invest in women. And if we are serious about achieving Africa's Agenda 2063 by building healthy oceans for the future generations, women cannot be left behind. So as we put on these discussions, let's understand that let's have a different perspective of how do we work together in coming up with solutions, because as I know, this conference is about moving from commitments to implementation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shamim, for your perspective. And clearly in our panel, women are not left behind. So thank you for bringing their voice here. Let me start now by asking some questions to our panelists. I will start with you, Ibu Kartika. You're the Director of Spatial Planning in Indonesia. So can you please tell her how spatial planning contributes to reducing waste and plastic leakage among the river basin and prevent it from reaching the ocean?
Test. Yes, okay. Thank you, moderator. As I previous stated that spatial planning actually is an important tool for addressing waste and plastic pollution from source to the sea. Why we call this important tools? Because currently in Indonesia actually we dealing with the integrated spatial planning in national level as well as in the province level. So we integrated spatial planning between land and the ocean part. So dealing with this kind of integration actually, spatial planning have the basic legal basic. So through this regulation, we can come up with the law enforcement when we dealing with the arrangement of the, let's say, watershed, and then maybe the river, something like that. So, in our opinion, by integrating watershed management, land use planning, and coastal protection, as well as law enforcement, we can reduce waste linkages into the river and also to the ocean. So, in our point of view, through this integration spatial planning, Indonesia see that spatial planning as a key enabler and can create more coordination among stakeholders and also as the tool for effectiveness approachment to tackling plastic pollution. And so, while through this marine spatial planning also, we believe we can develop and grow the ocean with a sustainable development. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your perspective. You talk about the source-to-sea approach and how government can help bring the enforcement and look at the problem from a holistic approach. I'm now going to move to Joyce, who I know has a presentation, and I think the clicker is just there. Shamim, if you can pass it to Anne. Joyce, you represent an investment bank, and we talk about enforcement, but of course enforcement is on the stick side of it. So talk to us a little bit on the investment, but what are the barriers that are preventing the capital from flowing into the solution towards a better circularity for plastic, and what kind of projects are most likely to attract investment and the scale. Not yet.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much, Clemens, and for the opportunity to share what we do at the bank. You're right, I'm from the European Investment Bank, and what we do is to finance projects. So what I'm going to share with you today is how we are actually able to finance projects that are related to plastic pollution. This is a very risky sector that you rarely find readily bankable projects. So we do work with both the public sector and the private sector. And for the first experience that I want to share with you is the experience we've had with developing projects in the public sector under a program called the COPY program. This is the Clean Oceans Project Identification and Preparation Program. So we all know the problem of plastics. And the main reason for pollution to the rivers by plastics is mismanagement of solid waste. If waste is not managed at source, spreads into the drains, spreads into the rivers, and flows downstream, finds itself into our oceans. So what informed the decision for us to support these kinds of projects is this problem we are seeing. And if you look at this map, you can see the concentration where the majority of the pollution of the ocean is. Worst affected areas is in West Africa, as you can see. So the bank wanted to finance plastic waste management projects in sub-Saharan Africa. And as I mentioned, these projects, they have to be bankable. So when we came and started looking at these types of projects, we could not find any bankable projects. And to define bankability in layman terms, the project has to have a clear business case. It has to have very strong sponsors or promoters. It has to have also a very clear costs and revenues. And it has to have high standards, environmental, social, technical. It has to meet the standards that have been set. So when we come to, we want to finance projects like this, we are not able to find them available for us to come in and just sign an agreement, a loan agreement with whoever promoter is interested, and we move forward. So what we did, we had a collaboration with several banks, the European Investment Bank, KfW, the German Development Bank, AFD, that's the Agence Française de Développement, the French Development Bank, and there was an initiative called the Clean Oceans Initiative. And these banks committed about 4 billion euros to finance projects that are related to preventing plastic pollutions into the oceans. And one of the outcomes of this was the COPY program. So for the COPY program, we started by identifying projects all over sub-Saharan Africa. This was a program specifically for sub-Saharan Africa, identifying potential projects. And then we did 20 in 20 different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We found that 10 of those could move to pre-feasibility study. We did the pre-feasibility study and found that about 5 of those can actually be financed. So if you can see the list here, these are the projects that we managed to prepare, and we've already signed a loan with Benin and also the government of Gabon, and the projects are ongoing with the implementation. But for Tanzania, Kenya, and the Gambia, those ones are still also in the process of being prepared. So this is how we are able to come into this risky sector and actually finance projects through technical assistance program to prepare them and bring them to bankability. But those are very big projects because the bank, the minimum loan we can give is actually 25 million euros. But when it comes to small sector project, like in SMEs, MSMEs, they are not able to absorb this amount of resource. So for this, we came up with a thematic blue economy window. It is called, we call it the Ocean Credit Line. And actually, we are the only IFI that has this credit line for SMEs in the blue economy space. And just to give you a taste of this, what we have done with this thematic blue economy window, we've done it in Tanzania. This was actually the pilot. And for this project, we were able to sign a 350 million euro loan with the banks in Tanzania. So these are intermediated lending. So if they're a commercial bank, they can absorb the bigger chunk of the money, and then they can distribute it to smaller SMEs. And we gave them conditions. At least 30% was going to gender, and at least another 30% going to blue economy. And there's been a very good uptake. We also provide them with a partial portfolio guarantee. What this means is that, you know, these SMEs, some of them operate informally. They don't have guarantees. If in case somebody comes to take a loan, they cannot repay back. They may not be able to pay back the loan, and other risks that the banks may face. So partially, some of the risk support that we give is to support these banks to be able to recover part of the loan that they've given out, just in case there's a default from the SMEs. And also, we provide technical assistance to build the capacity for both the SMEs and also the banks, because these SMEs, they don't have financial literacy, things like that. The banks also may not have a strategy for blue economy. It's not something they were dealing with because the sector is very risky. And this is progressing well. It's not only in Tanzania, it's also happening in Madagascar, and we are open to expanding it to other countries. So on the last part, on types of projects that we finance, as you can see, in the last 6 years, we've invested over 15 billion euros lending in the blue economy sector. And the sectors that we focus on, you can see them on the screen. We can finance projects in the waste management sector, in the water, stormwater, renewable energy, etc. So those would be sectors that are eligible for blue economy in case somebody is looking for financing in that. So that's it. In case you need any more information, you need to reach out, you can reach out on those contacts there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. I'll move to you now, Julie. Julie, you're the Regional Director of Westland International here in East Africa. So I would like you to give a little bit of an East African perspective. And first part of my question is going to be to talk a little bit about hope. So what do you see here in East Africa that gives you hope that plastic pollution can actually be tackled at scale? But on the other hand, to also link up with what Joyce was saying, what are the kind of investment that are the most urgently needed if we want to strengthen the role of wetlands, rivers, and coastal community in order to prevent plastic leakage into the ocean?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So first of all, just to say that plastic pollution is not only a waste problem. So it's an ecosystem and a development challenge. So most marine pollution actually begins on land. So rivers and wetlands are actually the pathways through which some of this pollution goes through. So, which means that even our coastal mangroves, some of our wetlands are also gravely affected when this pollution occurs. So, in essence, my key message is that if we want healthy oceans, we must start by really addressing that problem on land and upstream. And I think I've had that being clearly indicated. Now, what gives me hope is that I've been working in these wetlands for very many years. And I think when I started, the problem was grave. And you'd find the plastic all over in some of those wetlands. But nowadays what you find is that the women, the youth, have all organized themselves into small groups, and they're actually collecting this plastic. And they're finding users for this plastic, they're recycling it, they're getting support from different organizations. A case in point is a project I went in one of the mangroves. And I found that the communities were actually collecting the plastic, they were aggregating it, and they were sending it to somebody who was actually recycling it. And I further went and visited one of the government representatives, and they had contributed a chair that was made out of plastic to him. So the communities are actually doing something about it. Then, of course, the fact that the communities are actually combining environmental stewardship with plastic pollution, I think that also gives me hope. So they're not only restoring the mangroves or restoring the wetlands, but they're recognizing the fact that if they do not remove the plastic, then it does not amount to much. Then the second thing that gives me hope is the fact that at the policy level, there's actually something being done. The policies may not be finalized, they may not be implemented in the way we want, but I'm really happy to see when some of the countries have actually banned plastic. You cannot enter plastic with them. And more so when I see the private sector also supporting that initiative. I think I want to congratulate this hotel because since I came, I've not seen a plastic water bottle. So I think even the private sector is also doing something in that respect. Then the last thing that gives me hope is that we are thinking of it in terms of a source to sea problem. I think before we were just thinking about it as a sea problem, but I'm happy to hear more people talking about it in terms of source to sea, that if we do not do anything at the source, if we do not do anything in the land, then we are not doing much. Then of course, in terms of how the communities can be supported, I'll just mention one thing, then maybe if I have time, I can also talk a bit about it more. I think in the project we were in, the community-based initiatives where they can be supported by various organizations to be able to collect, aggregate, recycle this waste. I think those are initiatives that we can also look to. I'm happy to see the European Investment Bank has also extended some sort of facilities that organizations can also tap into to be able to sort out this problem. Let me leave it there, and then I can add more in case there's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Let me move now to Joyce, but the other Joyce. Joyce, you're the CEO of PACPRO. So maybe for you 3 questions, because I think for the non-Kenyan of us, it would be great if you could talk a little bit of PACPRO, what it is, and what it does. And of course, we talked about a source-to-sea approach, and we talk about investment and financing mechanism. In that pot of financing mechanism, extended producer responsibility, or EPR, is obviously very much coming into the table, especially as channeling some private sector investment. So can you tell us what Kenya has taught us about making producer responsibility work in practice? And then what needs to happen for circular system to become the norm and overtake the linear systems?
You can hear me? Better? No. Yeah, this is better? Okay. So, apologies. So, Joyce Gashugi Waweru, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at the Packaging Producer Responsibility Organization, PACPRO. In Kenya today, like a few other jurisdictions in Africa, we do have mandatory extended producer responsibility, which is really a policy approach where producers, the source, are now being made to manage the post-consumer packaging that they release into the environment. And so how it works is that organizations such as ourselves, we represent these companies as our members, and they pay into our organizations for every kilogram of material that they put into the market, and then we do transfer those funds into the value chain for recovery. So how Kenya is situating itself in terms of being able to transition EPR, and how circular economy solutions can be able to support recovery, and we can be able to begin to move the needle, is that, one, we are very young in EPR. And when EPR was being put together in a textbook, I think it was deemed that it could be copy-pasted everywhere globally, regardless. But as a concept developed in Europe, when we come to Africa, our infrastructure system is very different. Our recovery models are very different. Our financing options are very different. So Joyce has just spoken to EIB now offering financing for this sector, but we still have a challenge because we have a missing middle. A lot of our collection systems are informal. They are heavily community embedded. And the truth of the matter is very few of our waste value chain actors can actually walk into the banks that EIB has provided funds for on lending and actually access that credit. Why? There's a mismatch between risk and return. It's not understood. So the banks understand risk traditionally. In the waste management sector, circular economy, it's a very emerging sector, but it requires really patient and a different mindset in terms of how we understand risk. The reality is that traditionally a bank would peg risk as market volatilities in terms of the pricing of plastics, for instance. When is the demand? How is it coming in? How are the value chains supplying these materials? But that's not actually how the waste pickers or the waste collectors are actually doing this. And beyond that, they too don't also have this data. And so why EPR is important right now is that we are acting as an intermediary. One, we are able to de-risk the demand side of, let's say, the recyclables or the plastics, in terms of a recycler knows that there's a mandated fund, which we have, to be able to ensure that recovery of this packaging material happens. And so that provides comfort to a financial institution. But also from the collector side, they know that there's someone who has money to pay for it. Now, how do we leverage that? Is by the three of us, EIB, financial institutions, ourselves who are de-risking the demand side, and the collectors sitting in a room
and crafting a product that's fit for purpose for our market. And I think that's when we'll begin to see a shift in circular economy. If the money is not accessible or available, we'll keep seeing limited capital like philanthropic grants. This is the only capital that's available that's chasing these people in terms of the projects that they're able to run. But once the pilot projects are over, the grants dry up, then the projects, they collapse. Because the reality is, people for the longest time say cash is king, but it's actually cash flows that are king. And as so long as we're not able to get our waste collection value chain actors having steady streams of cash flow, then Joyce and every other financial institution is not going to be able to give them a chance. So this is where EPR is coming in to be able to kind of provide that stability that provides comfort to de-risk this system.
Thank you, Joyce. I think you're bringing up a very good point. How do we de-risk so that the financial capital that is actually available gets where it needs to get? And how do we actually blend public and private capital in a way that it can drive to that de-risking? Shamim, I'm going to come to you last, but definitely not least. I think you made a powerful intervention to talk about the role of women and how to take women also into that transition. Women are already connecting and responsible for the consumption and towards a healthier and better and less polluted ocean food system. How are they doing this? And then please, as a follow-up also, help us how we can, what it would take to invest in women which are at the front line, because waste pickers are very often also a women workforce. So these frontline responders to marine pollution, and what are the drivers of sustainable food system?
Wow, 1,000 questions, and thank you so much. First things first, I would like to say responsible consumption, it is about you in the room and myself in the room. Let me give you an example. We have exhibition booths. I don't know if you guys have had time to go through those exhibition booths and see what people are doing, amazing jobs, recycling, aquacycling. But one of the things that I realized talking to one of the exhibitors was around how are you going to convince me to ask somebody to buy this bottle of water at 300 shillings, Kenyan shillings, and not buy the plastic one which is 50 Kenyan shillings. So it is a whole aspect of how do we convince the consumer. Why is it 300, a whole 250? What happened in between here? And I think that is why I mentioned from the beginning, it is the whole aspect of reality check, trying to understand how do we talk about sustainability when it comes to consumption, but also how do we talk about bringing in the people to embrace and start adapting the solutions that we are creating to make sure that we prevent plastic pollution within our ocean ecosystems, and also talking about lakes and rivers. And one of the things that I would really like to highlight is it is about investment, especially with women who are at the forefront of providing these solutions. Some of these women are working on things that we never knew would ever exist. They're working on programs and projects and building companies that we have no idea exist, because we have been, I'm going to be realistic, we have been so clouded with the whole aspect of, let's talk about the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. The science has been speaking for the past 60 years. We have the plastic treaty, we have different treaties, policies, but then implementation is here. So how do we now move from the science itself, now talk about how do we implement, how do we work with investors, how do we make sure that women are being invested in, how do we make sure that women businesses are investable? And this is one of the questions that I've been asking everybody around the corridors. Is it that women businesses are not investable? Is it that you just don't see them, or what is happening? One example I'm going to give, because you asked me about examples. There's this company that we are working with, and they're doing fish waste. They're turning fish. For how many of us in the room consume fish? Majority of us consume fish. And do you know what you're consuming is only 40%? So where does your 60% go to? It is about the whole aspect of marine pollution. It is the whole aspect of plastic pollution. It is the whole aspect of food security, blue food systems. The 60%, that is what they are recycling and making different products, affordable products. Another thing is looking at how do we now create channels that are affordable, that are accessible by these women who are struggling on the shorelines of Dar es Salaam, for example, where I come from, or the shorelines of the Gambia, Sierra Leone, countries that I've been able to work with. How do we now bring them to such spaces and be like, we want to give you resources? And my sister Joyce mentioned, personally as a young person, we are tired of donor fund. I am not saying it's bad. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but we are tired. How do you talk about partnerships, concrete partnerships, where we are tackling problems together? Because we know the problems are there, but then if we keep on giving, people keep taking, and then the moment you cut off the hand, everything comes at a standstill, and it now becomes a problem to everybody. That is the same case with plastic pollution. It has been a problem for generations and generations. And in reality, I don't know if Africa is already at that position of saying we want to transition from plastic pollution. One thing, do we have infrastructures? Second, are we ready to do that? Third, is it affordable to the consumers that we want them to now starting using glass water bottles or whichever things that we are creating recyclable? So I think we need to turn the conversation and talk about what do we already have within the ecosystem of plastic pollution, and now how can we channel that and put in resources and the energy and be able to really understand that investments in this industry, it is going to be infrastructure intense, especially for the African continent, but then nobody is telling us that reality check. So I would just like to stop there and say we need to continue investing in women because they are the leaders, but most of the times they're the ones with the solutions, but most of the times they take on the lower positions, and then our male counterparts take on the whole credit of everything that these women are doing on the ground, whether recycling, waste recycling, plastic pollution, coming up with all these solutions, and then they don't get to stand on podiums like this. And I love the fact that we are all here representing those women to be like, we need credit as women in the sector, because we need to really understand that women are builders of this continent, and they're the backbone of food systems, which is going to really keep our oceans healthy and sustain yourselves in this room and myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shamim. Clearly, we don't need light anymore because you are shining so much. Thank you for your powerful speech and call. I will just build on one more idea that you have so beautifully laid out. Is also, how do we see waste, not as waste, but as a resource? And I think the bankability and the risk and the de-risking also come from that perspective. Only things that are discarded are things that don't have value, but there is value into this material. It is our choice to change that perception and to really make it in a flourishing economy, supporting local community and women organization, as you rightly pointed out. Thank you so much for our panelists. I think you've shared many different points, from women and community empowerment, how we're looking at a source to see problem from both point of view, from Julie and Kartika, and really looking at basins community. The problem starts on land. When it reaches the ocean, it is already too late. And last but not least, how can we enable that transition? How can we make the project bankable? How can we invest into infrastructure as Joyce shared with us? Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask you to stay seated because I'm really pleased to say that in the audience we also have other people and other voices that are doing great work and that are making commitment today also in the topic of tackling plastic pollution for a healthier ocean. So I haven't been able to see and locate everyone, so apologies if I call people which are not here, but I'm just going to do the due diligence of my list. I would like to see if the Honorable Rebecca Miano is in the room. No. Then I have next on my list the Honorable Monica Navarro de Valle, Minister of Environment from Costa Rica. I know they have a better plenary to attend. We'll excuse them. I have next on my list the Ambassador Giselle Fernandez Ludlow, Ambassador of Mexico to Kenya and representative to the UN Human Settlement Program and the United Nations Environmental Program. Please, I invite you on stage to make your statement. Thank you.
I guess we are stealing the light from the other plenary as well with all these powerful interventions. So thank you very much to my fellow panelists, and thank you for the invitation for Mexico to present our commitment. I am honored to be here with you this afternoon. We have been talking about plastics, how do we finance, how do we make sure it's properly integrated. So for Mexico, not only the economical, but also the social aspect of plastic has been a priority. The voluntary commitment that we announced today is the development of a national diagnostic on abandoned, lost, and otherwise discarded fishing gear, commonly known as ghost gear. Mexico recognizes that ghost gear represents one of the most pressing challenges facing our ocean. It affects marine biodiversity through entanglement of ghost fishing, damages critical ecosystems such as coral reefs and mangroves, creates risks for navigation, contributes to marine plastic pollution and microplastics, and generates economic losses for fishing communities, whose livelihoods depend on healthy marine resources. Addressing these challenges requires first understanding its scale and characteristics. While numerous efforts are already being undertaken across Mexico by fishing communities, civil society organizations, academia, and government institutions, we identify an important gap: the lack of a comprehensive national baseline to understand where ghost gear occurs, what impacts it is generating, and which solutions are proving most effective. Building on Mexico's membership in the Global Ghost Gear Initiative since 2020 and on previous efforts to prevent and combat ghost gear, this national diagnostic will compile, systematize, and analyze existing information on the issue across the country. It will identify ongoing actions, lessons learned, regulatory gaps, and opportunities for improvement, ultimately supporting the development of a national roadmap to guide future action. And also the composition of this panel is really representing what Mexico has been doing, because we have built this initiative through a participation of multi-stakeholder process. We are involving government institutions, of course, but the most important part, the fishing communities that need to be on board, researchers, conservation organizations, and other relevant actors. We have done this through workshops held across the country. We have listened to the voices of those who experience this challenge firsthand and who are already implementing solutions on the ground. The preliminary findings have already identified more than 200 actions addressing ghost gear across 16 Mexican states, demonstrating both the scale and the challenge and the commitment of local actors to tackle it. At the same time, we recognize that no country can solve this issue alone, as it has been said. International cooperation, knowledge exchange, and partnerships will be essential, particularly in areas such as gear recycling, circular economy, approaches that monitor technologies and best regulatory practices. To conclude, Mexico reaffirms its commitment to working alongside governments, international organizations, and all different actors to address global goals here and advance a sustainable ocean economy that benefits both our people, our nature, and without plastics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I am now calling to the stage Mrs. Ana Paula Leite Prates, Director of the Department of Ocean and Coastal Management of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change from the Government of Brazil. Please, the stage is yours.
Hello, I'm very, very, very inspired with the marvelous plenary, powerful female plenary. It's so amazing. Congratulations. Good afternoon. I am Ana Paula Prates, Director of Ocean and Coastal Management at the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. And it is a pleasure to be here in the name of the government of Brazil. Brazil has submitted 9 voluntary commitments to the conference. These include the implementation of ocean-based action in Brazil, NDC, National Adaptation Plan, and NBSAPs, the implementation of marine special planning, the integration of ocean literacy in the Brazilian national curriculum, and the strengthening of network of marine protected areas 30 by 30 targets. But recognize that plastic pollution is one of today's major environmental challenges, affecting marine biodiversity, coastal ecosystems, fisheries, tourism, human health, and the economy. We have also submitted a commitment to implement our national strategy for a plastic-free ocean. It is estimated that millions of metric tons of plastic enter the ocean every year, making it urgent to adopt measures aimed to prevent waste generation and promote more sustainable consumer partners. Because of that, Brazil established in 2025 the national strategy was signed as a presidential decree as a comprehensive framework to prevent, reduce, and eliminate plastic pollution in marine environment. The strategy represents Brazil's engagement to an integration, evidence-based approach to address plastic pollution in the ocean. It was developed through a participatory process involving governments, the private sector, civil society, local communities, women, of course, waste pickers, the scientific community, and other stakeholders across the plastic value chain. The strategy also advances sustainable fisheries by supporting responsible practices, strengthening value chains, and protecting traditional fisheries communities in line with biodiversity conservation and sustainable use of marine resources. These actions are already underway. We recently finalized the Federal Action Plan 2 strategy, comprising 81 actions coordinated by 17 federal institutions, including ministry and regulatory and development agencies. Brazil's commitment to transform guidelines in concrete results for ocean conservation and transition to a low carbon economy through systematic innovation. This is especially critical as the plastic value chain currently accounts for an estimated 3 or 8% of global green gas emission, with its contribution projected to double by 2060. Build off this momentum, we reaffirm Brazil's commitment to adopt and implementation of the national strategy for a plastic-free ocean, strengthening coordinated efforts to prevent, reduce, and eliminate plastic pollution in marine and coastal environment. But given there is only one ocean and the plastic pollution affects us all, we also hope that the global threat of plastic we'll move forward with the maximum urgency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now calling our third speaker, Mrs. Valentina Morello, Environmental Advisor of the Government of Italy. Please, the stage is yours.
Yes, seeing my previous speakers, I can really tell that I can really feel the women power here. Yes. So let me thank you, moderator and chair of this panel, to give me the opportunity to present the Italian contribution to the fight against plastic pollution. Plastic pollution is a problem, everybody knows that, and it's a problem not only for marine ecosystems and the living species, but it's a problem for humans. Science has proven indeed that plastic has been found even in women placenta, so it is really an urgent threat to fight. Italy has always developed and carried out a multiple number of national measures to fight plastic, both on land and sea. But when we talk about marine plastic pollution, we are aware and believe that really a coordinated action is needed indeed among countries, and it's crucial indeed. Italy is in the Mediterranean, so we believe that the protection of Mare Nostrum is a common responsibility for Mediterranean countries. And this is why we really trust the UNEP-MAP Barcelona Convention that protects the Mediterranean on several aspects, including marine pollution. And over the last years, indeed, Italy has contributed to $5 million to the program of work of the Barcelona Convention and to several actions, including on marine plastic pollution. One of those is the Regional Plan on Marine Litter Management, which is the first regional plan legally binding in the region. So it requests parties to define national monitoring programs that are aimed to identify priority areas as to be able to react to them. And so such monitoring measures include also river mouths. So it's one. Monitoring is important for Italy. We care a lot of that also because as member state of the European Union, we have to comply with the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. So we have a national monitoring program that provides for action on monitoring and data collection on quantity, typology, composition, and possible sources of litter on land, sea, surface, seabed, and river mouths. And coming to rivers, Italy attaches particular attention to the source-to-sea approach, and I've heard a lot about this. And we care about the need to strengthen the link between water policies and the protection of coastal and marine ecosystems, given rivers are really key factors of Mediterranean recovery, talking about Mediterranean. So, for example, in Italy, we have developed a project, the Ministry of Environment, that I'm representing in particular today, on the monitoring of macro-floating waste found at river mouths. So currently, the mouths of 14 rivers have been monitored, and it has been reported that those rivers with large flows and passing through urban centers are actually those carrying most of the waste to the sea. So more broadly, Italy is at the, but really related to to this theme, Italy is at the forefront in the fight against hydrocarbon pollution at sea deriving from oil spills through the implementation of prevention and response measures. So Italy invested $13 million to strengthen surveillance by the Coast Guard in marine protected areas and on oil platforms, including through a satellite surveillance system capable of detecting potential oil spills in real time. This commitment, just to let me tell this commitment is part of a package of commitments amounting to more than 600 million euros that Italy has taken and has contributed to on ocean governance in general. So from conservancy to sustainable fishing and aquaculture, ocean observation, research, youth, and cooperation. Finally, I cannot really conclude my intervention by confirming the full support of my country, of Italy, to a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. We really believe in this instrument. We really stand ready to work together with the global community to achieve this really crucial goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now calling Mr. Luis Bernardo, advisor of the President of the Azores government. Please, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for such an inspiring and powerful panel. So I'm here on behalf of the President of the Regional Government of the Azores. The Azores is the autonomous region of Portugal, one of the two autonomous regions. We are quite a small archipelago right in the middle of the Atlantic, of the North Atlantic, about 700 nautical miles from mainland Europe. But we do have around 1 million square kilometer EEZ around our islands. Interesting enough, one of our most important fleets, which is the tuna Poland line fleet, actually it's running a plastic pollution zero program. So they basically do not, they actually gather plastic from the ocean as they go along at fishing, which is quite interesting. And so the Azores, in order to address marine pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate action, and as we announced at our Oceans Conference in 2024 in Greece, the Azores have approved the largest marine protected area network in the North Atlantic, covering about 300,000 square kilometers. Half of this area is fully protected. Within the remaining area is benefiting from a high level of protection from extraction and pollution. Also known as the Azores Marine Park, this offshore network now protects 30% of the Portuguese national waters surrounding the islands, and entered into force in January 2026, this year. This was not made in our offices. This was a project that was supported by the Blue Azores program, which is actually led by the President's office. And it took us around 6 years to get to this point, with a big investment of millions of euros from the government and also from our partners from the Blue Azores program, private partners. And it was just a stakeholder engagement participatory process that co-designed this network. Took about 2 years with over 40 meetings with representatives from 17 institutions, from fisheries to tourism to government and non-governmental institutions. And so the legal approved diploma also establishes a very ambitious timeline to develop all the necessary regulations, ensuring that this network will be fully implemented and effectively managed by 2030. So it's not just on paper. Therefore, The Azores commit to fully implement their marine protected area network, including the legal approval of regulations for management plans that include pollution, biodiversity, climate, and social economic key performance indicators. The Azores also will approve a sustainable finance system diploma by the end of this year and review all of their coastal MPAs and the compliance and enforcement system by 2028. Thank you very much.
I'm now calling Mrs. Gladys Kimeu, Partnerships and Membership Coordinator of the Kenyan Youth and Biodiversity Network.
Distinguished delegates, Excellence, colleagues, partners, and fellow persons of the ocean, good afternoon. My name is Gladys Kimeu, and the commitment that I'm about to read will wow your mind. On the occasion of the 11th Our Ocean Conference in Mombasa, I hereby announce the commitment on behalf of the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network on youth-led citizen science for advancing marine plastic data in Kenya and across the region. For Kenyan youth, our ocean is not only a resource that we see, feel, and touch, but also a learning laboratory, inherited heritage, and future. However, in the era of convenience, plastic pollution is increasingly standing between our fundamental right and that of the generations after us to a healthy, productive, and clean ocean environment. At KYBN, we believe that the solution to plastic crisis lies in the collective action and upstream policies informed by reliable, accessible, and timely data. Today, the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network is pleased to announce a new commitment aimed at strengthening our collective understanding of plastic pollution among the Kenyan coast through youth-led citizen science and digital innovation. Data on marine plastics, particularly on the movement of flow of plastics along Kenya's coastline, remain inadequate, fragmented, and rapidly changing. This creates significant change for policymakers, researchers, business, and communities seeking to design effective intervention. It also limits our ability to understand the broader impacts of plastic pollution on biodiversity, public health, livelihoods, and future generations. However, we believe that young people are uniquely positioned to help bridge this gap. So since 2019, the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network has been working with young people along the Kenyan coast to understand patterns of plastic pollution through regular plastic audits and community-based monitoring efforts. These initiatives have generated valuable insights into sources and pathways of plastic pollution and have strengthened youth participation in environmental stewardship. The evidence generated through these efforts have informed awareness campaigns on plastic pollution that supported meaningful youth engagement in the ongoing negotiations toward a global treaty on plastic pollution and has strengthened calls for upstream interventions that address plastic pollution at its source. It has also demonstrated the immense value of empowering young people as contributors to science, policy, and environmental action. Building on these experiences that I've mentioned, we are proud to announce our commitment to expand youth-led monitoring and data generation on marine plastics through the development of innovative digital tools. The Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network is committing $50,000 clap. Yeah. Yeah, I will repeat that part. So the Kenyan Youth Biodiversity Network is committing $50,000 towards the design and deployment of a citizen science mobile application and complementary digital tools that will enable young people to collect, analyze, and share information on plastic pollution along the Kenyan coast. These tools will help generate more accessible, real-time, and actionable data on plastic flows, including the movement of transboundary plastics influenced by the ocean currents and wave action. Our ambition is clear: to make communities a central part of contribution to data available not only to governments and research institutes, but also to civil society organizations, educators, businesses, and young people themselves. We envision a future where evidence generated by citizens contributes directly to policy development, scientific research, responsible business practices, and behavioral change at every level of society. But this is not a journey that one organization can undertake alone. So we therefore extend an open invitation to governments, marine observatories, research institutions, the private sectors, civil society organizations, philanthropic partners, and development agencies to join us in this endeavor. Together, we can strengthen monitoring system, expand access to data, enhance scientific collaboration, support youth leadership, and create the evidence base needed for lasting solutions. Our shared ocean deserves decisions informed by science and policies and informed by evidence. Kenya's young people are ready to be equal partners in this vision. Let us work together to transform data into action, action into impact, and impact into a healthier ocean for the people and nature alike. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I will now call our last commitment maker, and then I would like to ask all of the people that made commitment to join the panelists at the end of the intervention for a family photo before we leave the stage to the next panel. So I'm now calling Mr. Farazi Zimudzi, Sub-Regional Coordinator of Eastern Africa for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
Thank you. I think I'll introduce myself. I'm Matthew Camilleri from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. I had been fortunate enough to lead the negotiations leading to the guidelines on the marking of fishing gear. So this topic is very much close to my heart. Marine litter from fisheries and maritime transport continues to threaten marine ecosystems, biodiversity, and livelihoods of coastal communities. Among the most persistent challenges is abandoned, lost, and discarded fishing gear, known as ALDFG, which can continue to impact marine life and habitats long after it enters the ocean. FAO is pleased to announce today its commitment to strengthen global efforts to prevent and reduce marine litter from fisheries and maritime transport, with a particular focus on ALDFG. We know that fishing gear is made up of plastic. Well, most of it is made up of plastic. Through 2030, FAO will support three principal actions. Firstly, we will promote the implementation of the FAO voluntary guidelines on the marking of fishing gear, a globally recognized tool that helps prevent and reduce ALDFG, improve fishing gear traceability, and support sustainable fisheries management in general. Secondly, FAO will conduct fishing gear loss surveys in partnership with governments, other organizations, and initiatives such as the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, generating critical data and evidence to better understand the scale and drivers of gear loss and to inform effective policy responses. Thirdly, together with the International Maritime Organization, FAO will continue to provide technical assistance and policy guidance to support countries in preventing and reducing marine plastic litter from both the fisheries and maritime transport sectors. To deliver these actions, FAO is committing more than $7 million, together with in-kind contributions up to 2030. This commitment reflects our determination to work with governments, industry, scientists, and civil society to protect marine ecosystems, strengthen sustainable fisheries, and support resilient coastal communities. Together, we can turn knowledge into action and make meaningful progress towards cleaner, healthier, and more productive oceans. Thank you.
I'm going to call you back on stage in a second, so maybe you want to stay with the panelists. This, ladies and gentlemen, closes the plenary 7 on tackling plastics, micro to macro. I want to thank our panelists once again for their powerful voices. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you all for choosing this plenary over the one that is happening in Flamingo, and asking all of the commitment makers to please come on stage for a last photo, and we'll leave the stage to the next plenary. Thank you very much for your attendance.